here that are more unique to the needs of the parents in your school and in your classrooms. So I hope you enjoy your time here and that we learn from each other. And at any point, you can stop and ask me questions or provide some insights. Like I said, this is a new topic for me and something to explore. One of the things that I started reading this summer, and I don't know if any of you got this book, Choral Counting and Counting Collections. There's a chapter in it all about partnering with families, and that's kind of what struck a chord with me. Thought, well, what can we do beyond just this, and what else is out there? So we will explore part of this book together in later sessions, but I didn't want to start with it because I wanted our ideas to be untainted, if that makes sense. And this may not meet the needs of your school community, but I'll hold this up there for now. Just out of curiosity, what choral counting is. And then how about counting collections? Oh, so we have some learning to do. We can definitely dive into that one. The other thing that sparked this topic was on Twitter. There was a question. We have the reading for 20 minutes every night for families. That's kind of a given, and we've seen a lot of good come out of that. But what's the equivalent for math? What is out there? What's something that's easy and accessible and that everyone can kind of wrap their minds around? So those were kind of the two things that sparked me thinking, besides just talking to parents in my kids' school. So our purpose, so if you'll just take a moment to read that. Might have to fix the grammar in part of that. And we'll dive deeper into what that means, that communicate. So to start off, we're going to do an inclusion activity to allow every person to enter into the room. So that means every voice is heard at some point in the room, whether it's just with a partner or out loud with the whole group. But take 2 minutes to just silently jot your ideas down. There's Post-it notes in the little pencil boxes. There's also some Jolly Ranchers in there. I apologize. They got a little melted because they were in my car this week, and you know how hot it was in the beginning. But they're still good. So I want you to jot down a couple thoughts about this focus question above. What is one assumption you have about our breakout topic? If you're going to silently do that, I'll give you a few minutes. And then when it looks like we're all ready, I want you to just kind of find an eye contact partner in the room. So when you're ready, when you have it all done, you kind of stand up and make eye contact with somebody, and that's going to be your partner, and you're going to share your thoughts with each other. You guys all get a chance to share? Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't give you the prompt. Go ahead and share if you haven't already. Oy. You go first.
Do you guys have instructional math coaches and literacy coach as well in every building?
Guthrie Lane? Well, not math. I was the only math one, but they do have instructional coaches in every building.
But you were only.
I was the only math coach in the district.
And you went to all elementary buildings?
I did for a little while, and then they wanted me just in the K2 building for a certain amount of time. Really dive in there. What district are you from?
Kendall Hills.
Okay. And what's your support system like there?
Each building is just a coach.
Okay.
Yeah,
For all
not
sections.
yeah.
Do you find that helpful?
Oh yeah, I love ours. I think it depends on if you want to utilize them or not. Like I'm one that is constantly in her office, like, hey, what about this, what about this, and so I feel like I get a ton out of it. I don't know that everybody necessarily feels that way, but our buildings, we have 700 kids in our building, K-5, and we definitely benefit from having like either two just coaches all around or having a literacy coach and a math coach. So that's why I asked.
Yeah. I mean, most people's specialty is in literacy, so it's hard to find math specialists, and it is helpful.
Do you have math background? Or?
Yeah, okay. I used to teach middle school math, and then taught some elementary math, and then I coached high school and K-5. I love the kindergarten world. It scared me at first. What grade level do you teach?
Second grade.
Oh, that's adorable. If you can pause wherever you're at in your conversation. Thank you. Is there anyone who's willing to share what they heard or what they said or what their partner said?
Sure. My partner, we looked at that question a couple different ways, but she said that one of the assumptions she's making is that parents aren't really sure where, like kind of like you were saying with yours, your child is, they're not really sure what to do with math activities for the kids to make that connection from middle school.
Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of confusion about what to do or where they might enter in somewhere. What else?
I said that we will enhance mathematics in our community, starting with the parents and getting the families involved, so it's not so kind of like a lot of my parents when they first come in. I teach kindergarten, and the one thing they care most about, sorry, the Jolly Rancher came up, but is reading this, reading that, reading this, and then we're kind of like, okay, but let's take a look at their math, and they're almost afraid to involve themselves in it because they don't quite understand, or they say, oh, it's so different from when I learned it, or I don't understand this. So I think that it's a good way for us to get the community back involved and caring about math and understanding it.
So there's also some confusion about what math is in school right now, and also some other barriers that may be in place there. What other assumptions are out there?
I think the way we're teaching kids about math is so different from the way a lot of parents have learned, so I think there's a disconnect there, so that's confusing somebody.
The experience, parents' experience is different from their student experience.
If they're reading something home and the kids can understand it, and then the teachers are like, I don't know this.
Mm-hmm. And why would they? I mean, it's not in the realm of anything they experienced before. Or maybe they have, but we don't know. I saw one other hand.
I was just saying, kind of a little bit what you said about reading. You know, if your child's at home with you and you say, hey, go read a book, and they can by themselves go and read a book. And if they can self-regulate, yeah, that word was wrong or that was not right. Like the kids can begin to do that. For math, the parents kind of have to sit there and be able to interact with them. And so I think some parents just feel like ill-prepared. Like what if they don't know how to do that or they're not familiar with it, or you know, students can't self-regulate their math because they might think it's right, it still could be wrong. And so parents don't know how to combat that, and then they can say, well, some way my teacher taught it. so lots of like just trying to figure out where to work through those problems and creating that partnership there.
Yeah, so what might that look like for parents at home? Because it will look different than just reading a book. Although, do any of you have or hear from parents who talk about kids coming back and saying, well, my mom said to do this with reading and that. So there's some similar experience there too. All right, last call. Anyone else willing to share their assumption or something that they heard? So our outcomes for the whole time are listed right here. The ones in yellow are what we're going to dive into today. Just take a moment and look through those. So some of these outcomes may change based on what we're doing and what we're finding. So this was sort of my first attack. So I really thank all of you for going on this journey with me, because this is going to be a little bit different. And I'm kind of I'm doing what I'm hoping you will do. Try out something with parents and kind of tweak it as it goes. So our agenda for today, we have a welcome. I'm going through the agenda right now. We're going to do a little bit of math together because I want to do that every time and just show you something easy and quick and accessible to do. We'll get into the why, start building some empathy, and moving forward. Before we do our math, though, I would like to just kind of get an idea of who is in the room. So what we're going to do is, it's called, stand up, sit down. So stand up if the statement I say is something that pertains to you or that you agree with. And if the next thing I say is something that is not you, you sit down. Okay? Does that make sense? So please stand up if you like pizza. Start with the easy ones. Not to single someone out in the room. Stand up if you like ice cream. Ooh, everybody. Okay, stand up if you read a good book this summer. Stand up if you went out of the state this summer. Stand up if you went out of the country. Oh, wow, where'd you guys go?
Turks and Caicos. Jamaica. Italy.
Making everyone jealous in this room right now. All right, stand up if you have parent volunteers that come into your room. Okay. Stand up if you have parent math nights at your school. Not if if you've had them in the past, doesn't matter. Okay, not that many. Stand up if you've had a curriculum night in your school that kind of goes over a lot of different things. You used to? Okay. Stand up if you are a parent of a school-aged child. All right, good. So about a little more than half of us. All right, this will help us out in our experiment today. All right, stand up if you send a note or newsletter home each week to parents. Stand up if you have a system of getting feedback from parents or a way for them to contact you easily. Stand up if you teach kindergarten. Okay, how about first grade? Second grade? Third grade? Fourth grade? Third and fourth? Is it a split?
It's 3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5. Oh, interesting. So fifth grade, you still get to stand. Fifth grade? Okay, so you're going to be our big fifth grade representative. How about coaches? I'm a math coach. Stand up if you're a math coach. Where are you a math coach?
It's a new thing for me. So, West Michigan Academy, I work with grades 5 through 8.
Okay. So this will be interesting.
But communication with families is a big part of that one.
Excellent. Well, you are in the right room. Stand up if you are an administrator. No, administrator. Okay. Did I cover everyone's role at school? Okay. And then stand up if you invite parents as a guest in your room, or you've had them kind of come and sit in your room. In the past. Yeah. And then those parents of school-age children, can you stand up if you feel like you have a good handle on what they're doing in the classroom?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and everyone can sit down. That's just information for me, and kind of nice for you to see who we have here represented. So we're going to dive into some math. Has anyone heard of how many? The routine how many? Okay. What we're going to get started with, how many? It's to begin to develop the understanding of units. So it's a picture, it's an ambiguous image, so there's no set. You know how in traditional counting books, it's like they count the ducks. There's 2 ducks. And the next page, there's 3 horses. The next page, there's 4 cows. It is inherent in even the literature, they count the cows. And so it tells you what to count. So this book doesn't tell you what to count. And it's just a photograph. And it allows for multiple interpretations of what you might count. This will make sense once we put something up there. So to start it, you just simply ask how many. You don't say how many cows. You just say how many. And you listen to the reasoning and notice the shifts in the units. So these are some, I did a couple of these with my own kids last night and had some fun with that. So I want you just to look at that image yourself right now and think, how many? Don't say anything to anyone else yet. Bless you. When you've got how many of something in mind, just put your thumb up so I know. Who's willing to share how many of something, what they saw, and how many they saw?
15 avocados.
15 out. And so in all the number talks and different routines we've been doing, if you saw that same number, 15 avocado halves, you do that same as me, so you can see who's thinking alike here. Anything other than 15?
I was thinking how many are empty. How many avocados are empty?
Would you point to the ones, what do you think she means by empty?
Without the seed, without the pit.
And is that what you meant? Mm-hmm. So how many did you see?
7.
And if you thought the same thing, oh, you got some pitless people on the same wavelength. Anything different? We had 15, we had 7. Yes.
Mine was 7, but it wasn't pitless. I guess it was full avocados. Or 7.5.
Who's willing to show us what he means by full avocados and 7 full avocados? Yeah.
I was wondering something similar too, because I noticed that there's 8 pitted avocados, and if you were to take an empty avocado and cover pitted avocado, that would make one whole avocado. But he said 7.5. So if there's 8 pits, there's a half that isn't on this cutting board. So I was wondering about that.
You can say what Jason said in their own words. What does he mean by that? What's he talking about?
If you took each avocado, put it together, like a whole avocado, instead of the half, you'd be missing the other half of the pitted one, so there wouldn't be one pit to match it up.
Is anyone wondering where that one is? What happened to it?
Well, it wouldn't make the array, so it wouldn't make a little rectangle if you had that other extra pit, or extra half.
Use another word there, Stephanie. What word did you hear her say?
I heard array.
Array. What is an array? Stephanie said array. What is an array?
A group organized by columns and rows.
Oh yeah, this is in your curriculum, isn't it? And so you can see where this can go. There's a lot of different places. My daughter's in first grade, and she noticed the 7 whole avocados, which she kept saying, and there's one extra. And she was baffled by that. It just bothered her. And it was a good bothering, right? Like, I want you to be thinking about where is that other avocado half? It's not symmetrical. It's not coming out correctly. Like, I don't know. Maybe someone sliced it up for a burger and the rest of these are for guacamole. I have no idea. But, so that's kind of what how many is. Now, if I said my unit, or I saw 1, what could I be talking about? What was that?
The chopping board?
Yeah, maybe the cutting board. There's 1 cutting board there.
Maybe there's one avocado with a bit of a dump on it.
Oh, does everyone see that one? Mm-hmm. They're looking kind of different from each other. What other ways do you think we could count some of these? Someone I did show this to did multiplication to figure out how many there were. I could start asking, how did you get the 15 if 15 was what you got? When they were talking about, when Jason started mentioning wholes, that brings in some fractional language there. What does it mean that there's a whole and there's halves? What is that?
I was looking at the whole chopping board and saying how much of the chopping board is not there because I was intrigued by the little piece missing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this thing right here? I don't know. Maybe if we look. Oh, yeah, it is the little handle. There's what can hang on something. But that's basically what this book is. And it starts out with some simpler images. And then it starts getting into ones with multiple things. This was the one I was using with my son and my daughter last night. My son's 4, so he just likes to treat everything as something to count. And so he came up with 8 because he counted the pizza cutter as something on there too. But my daughter's like, no, there is not 8 things here. And so she was showing him. She doesn't have a lot of fractional language yet, but she kept calling these ones, and they're in 6. She was saying quarters because that's what she had for it. But I thought that was really interesting. She's trying to describe, this isn't quite whole, but I don't have all the language to use yet. But she said there was 4 whole ones and then 2 with 5 quarters. And I'm like, well, what about these guys? So then she started talking about those too. So it's just an interesting, there's no rules to it. And it starts to get more complex though once you realize units can shift and change. And that's really important for kids, especially with fractions. When you have a good understanding of units and groups of units, your fractional understanding will be that much stronger. But I just wanted to show you one little thing that's out there. This is a book by Christopher Danielson. He has a blog. It's called Talk Math with Your Kids. So he's constantly working on different things. Which one doesn't belong? How many of you are familiar with that? Okay, more people. He made that book, that shape book, the Which One Doesn't Belong, which kind of spearheaded some of those websites. Not that I want you to go out and spend your own money on buying a lot of things, but it's just the idea of using photographs to have a mathematical conversation. And I think that photographs are a really accessible thing for students, parents, and teachers. And they're a part of our everyday life, so kids could bring in photographs of something they find interesting to count. And that's one way to bring some home into school and vice versa. What questions do you have about how many or comments? All right. Yeah.
I've done a few of these with 7th grade, and they're still very interesting at that level, how they see it. So I like how they go from like a 4-year-old to a 7th grader. And they love it too. I've been looking at pictures at them.
Thank you for sharing that. Where do you get some of your pictures from?
There's a whichonedosn'tbelong.com. It's like it's WO.
Is it the .ca one?
Yeah, .ca. There's another one I've done with a lot of pictures. It's a French guy.
Yes. And that's Number Talk Images, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, it's all in French, but Google translates it right now.
I think it's numbertalkimages.com, but I could be wrong there.
I think it's saved somewhere.
NT images, I think.
Oh, NT Images?
I feel like it, yeah.
We'll just put
It's a blog.
Yeah, that one is a lot of pictures of muffins and donuts and bonbons and real interesting photographs. There's another person on Instagram, and I'll pull that up later. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he takes candy and then makes elaborate pictures with them. And so there's just hundreds of Skittles or something, but they're in this really cool arrangement, which could really serve as one of these images to think about. How might I count these? And it gets into some geometric pieces there if they're in triangles, and I'm looking at the area, kind of how many Skittles.
Just for the question, what you wrote, does it say NT images or what does it? Yes.
NT Images.
NT images, okay.
Yeah, it's ntimages.weebly.com.
Let me rewrite that.
It's really long.
NT Images.weebly.
Yes.
And then just .com?
Well, there's
Oh.
I'm going to see if
If someone doesn't mind trying that and just see if you get somewhere that has a bunch of pictures.
NT images pops up.
Yes, it's got but the other one you have at the top of WODD.ca.
Yes. I think it's California might be the CA there. Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I could see this as something parents could do at home very easily. And it's language independence is their focus.
Mm-hmm.
So the young populations that don't speak English at home, this could be something that they could easily enter into at home.
And how many of you, as parents of school-age children, do you think, would that be easy to just take home and ask a question like that and spend some time? Maybe the conversation lasts 3 minutes, but it's still a conversation around math. We're going to dive a little bit into why we want parents to be our partners in a community. I think most of you kind of know why, and that's why you're here. But before we put up a slide here, what are some of the things you know about why is it important for parents to be a partner with the school? What are the benefits? Why do we care?
Student buy-in. I mean, the parents buy into it, that school's a good place to be, then kids will too, and they'll thrive and do much better, or try.
So kids watch what their parents do and their reactions and attitudes towards something.
Universal vocabulary. You have a conversation with your child about what they're learning, understand what the child is talking about. So you use the word like array or something, and your parent was like, "What are you talking about?" And the student really can't explain it. Then there's that disconnect. And then sometimes parents, they just dismiss or whatever, just go on with a different conversation. And the student doesn't get the importance of, oh, that was important when I didn't contribute.
So that connection between what's going on in school and what's going on at home is very important. What else? What are some other reasons we want parents to be a part of this mathematical community?
I mean, if we believe that really they're the first educators and they need to be doing it, we're just there to support that learning and thinking. So to give them the right ways to support their kids is really something that I would want for my students.
So parents are educators at home as well, and we need to empower them to do that. So you can Google all kinds of things. If you put in parents in school, you'll get all kinds of different articles and things about parent engagement and involvement. So this is from the MDE website. And so it says the most accurate predictor of a student's achievement is not income or social status, but the extent to which the family is able to do these three things. So if you take a look there. Turn to a shoulder partner right now and just say something that stands out to you from those three things. What's a word or phrase that is most important to you? You don't have to use my bold-faced ones.
Yeah. I guess I took this more though as
And then bring your conversations to a close. If I could hear from three people, what was important to you or what was important to your shoulder partner? Looking for three people to share out. Okay, one. We need two more. Two. Three. All right, so one, Carla.
I just said the word reasonable, so reasonable expectations, both for, like, from a teacher standpoint of what you're sending home and how much you're sending home, and then reasonable expectations as a parent too, like for your child and what they can handle and not handle, and not putting too much pressure on them.
So reasonable in what's being sent home, and then how you manage that at home as well. Two.
The school and community, I think from a parent's perspective, and I think about this teacher is with my child for 6, 7, 8 hours, that's a lot longer than I can even be with my own child. So that kind of makes me think about, I want to know what's going on, and school and community, you can't really separate it, even though it is separate. Ultimately, they are there with those educators for a long time during the day.
So you bring up
from a parent's perspective.
Right. So kids are in school with us. parents do entrust their children with us for a long portion of the day. That, you're right, most don't get to see their child that long, well, unless they're keeping them up really, really late. So there has to be some sort of connection. And there is one, whether you feel like it is or not. Because the kid is at home and at school, so they are part of that. And number 3.
Maintaining high yet reasonable expectations. I think that's really important for parents. Last year I had a few kids that were pretty low, but their parents were really involved and kept their expectations high but reasonable for their child. And both of those girls were the hardest workers in my class, and their parents knew how important education was and encouraged them along the way. And it was totally reflected in the amount of work and effort that they put in every day. And even though they still were behind at the end of the year, they were happy. They came to school and did their best. And I told the parents that's all I can ask from them. And I just really appreciated the open communication with the parents and how they said, well, what else can I be doing? How can I best be helping her? And they just set those expectations high, but in a way that the kids could reach them.
So maybe we should add something there. High well, we have that reasonable. Like, there's wiggle room. We keep it high, but not so frustrating that people shut down. Is there a hand? I thought I saw. I'm not going to make you read this. This is also from the MDE site, and you can see there's loads of different reasons why that partnership is really essential and what it can do for kids and families. I'm going to put this, I don't expect you to read any of this right now. It's like, for your eyes. This is going to be in Google Classroom, so if you want to take a look at this later, feel free. But as you can see, there are a lot of benefits, and there's a lot of research behind parents being involved. And so that word, parent engagement, parent involvement, is in a lot of this research. But you'll find, what does that mean? And what does that look like? Like I said, when I started trying to dig into what does this look like for math specifically, I got a lot of one type of thing, but not a lot of how do we see parents as assets and not deficits. Most of what I see is that the parent is causing a deficit in the kid's education. And I don't think that's the approach that we want to do. If you want someone to be a partner, you're not thinking about them as like, well, here's what you can't do, but that already sets it up for failure. So what is our journey going to look like? What are we going to consider involvement and engagement that's authentic and meaningful and around mathematics? So how many of you have seen these before? Those Facebook posts about math homework? This one, let's see, this dad was an engineer and just really upset by his son's test coming home and having this answer wrong. So he wrote a nice little note there, and that went viral. I'll take you a moment if you do want to read that. Number one, there is something wrong with the type of question being asked and what's involved in it. But clearly there's a disconnect between maybe the teacher understanding what they're looking for, the parent understanding why are they looking for this in the first place, and maybe even just some frustration at home with the kid. You know, maybe his son came home and was like, oh, I got this wrong in the test. I feel really bad about it. And taking a look at it, like, why are you doing this in the first place?
I don't understand the Schuitema.
Oh, this one? So this was from another parent. This one also went viral.
Oh, I thought it was somehow connected.
Oh, no, this is a different one. And this child's parent was getting a lot of things home with 10 frames on them. And just thought 10 frames were ridiculous. And so, as a joke, he wrote a check to the school in what he considered 10 frame, but I'm not really quite certain what the X's and O's mean there. But what does that tell you about what he understands about why his kid's doing 10 frames? Right, he thought it was ridiculous and a waste of time. And so that's an opportunity to have a conversation about the why. What is the purpose of something like that? But maybe that opportunity is a little late here once somebody writes a check to the school in 10 frames. Both of these went viral and were all over Facebook and Twitter, and you can imagine what happened then and the conversation that resulted. And so here's one, or a couple, viewpoints of what new math is like in school right now. Does that parent feel like a part of that math community? No. Are they going to tell other parents how awesome math is? No. Probably most of their conversation is around how ridiculous 10 frames are and making fun of them and making up crazy problems about Jack and how he messed up something. And you can see here, frustrated parent. That's what we don't want. We don't want frustrated students, frustrated parents, or frustrated teachers. That doesn't make for a good mix.
It's so funny, you know, I've been around, obviously, older person in the room, and this new math concept happens every about 15 years, or maybe not even that so much. You know, like there's always a new concept that comes out, and then we, as educators, embrace it and start using it. And then so the people who were part of that surge have no idea what I'm talking about. It's just like technology, it becomes like a barrier sometimes. It's all new information. And then we jump aboard as educators and say, okay, this is what we're going to do now. And then we leave behind people that were like, well, I just figured out the last new math. Now there's a new math. And it's just been a never-ending cycle.
But communication is a major problem here. Not just from schools, but just in general about what mathematics is and the approach. So if you would just briefly read those two sentences, I took those from this article right here. So like I said, the research is more on the deficit end. And they were looking at parents who had math anxiety themselves and found that when they helped with homework, and just homework in general, it wasn't anything else, but when they helped with homework, that attitude sunk in with the student. It wasn't that they couldn't do the math or whatever, but whatever they might say, oh, I'm just not good at math, it's not in my genes, we're not a math family. Statements like that affected those students. And so just giving someone more of something or saying, watch this Khan Academy video, it's going to help you out, I think that would just make it worse. I'm not sure. Or just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, I already have math anxiety, so I'm going to need some help because I'm not sure how to do this. And so already people think of me as someone who can't help, so I need these other tools. So I'm not sure that that's an approach that we want to have either. So we've got frustrated parent, anxious parent. How can we look at it a little bit different? So a lot of work I've been involved in is around equity and accessibility in mathematics. So that's kind of the lens that I want to use for this. So not looking at parents as deficits. I want to change that. This is what I was imagining in my head as if this parent is one that already has math anxiety, and then you're trying to just heap on more things like, well, why don't you come to this class and learn more math and do this and do that? It's just kind of like hitting them on the head. And I don't know that that's going to be that effective. Sorry, I won't have you read this much every time. This is directly from this book. This line here, that two-way communication, is what I really want to think about and have our group wrestle with. What other things did you notice from those short passages?
Just merely having parents do activities that lend to their understanding.
What we expect or want or ask parents to do is non-instructional, perhaps.
So we don't give any ownership of some of the instruction or content. And we also don't necessarily, we may have an activity, but may not understand the purpose or meaning behind that.
We do even educators in our classroom. We have activities, but you got to stay focused. There needs to be clarity of purpose. And we need to make sure we communicate that with parents just like we do with the kids.
So things that get sent home too, what's the purpose for some of those and why? So for our purposes, we're going to think of mathematical communities as this two-way, so that families have something to bring in and we have things to share with families, and then it's a two-way communication. When I was in the classroom, most everything was me giving it to the family, me, and not always bringing things back in to share as a like truly making a community. And I think that's, it's nobody's fault. It's traditionally how it is, and that's how schools are viewed. You teachers are the experts, so you do hold the power there. It's like, you tell me what to do as a parent. Please tell me what to do. But I think there might be something interesting that can shift and happen for students and parents and teachers if we somehow make these things a two-way experience. It's okay if you have no idea what I'm talking about at this point in time, because we're going to dive into what this is going to look like. We'll look at specific examples of how that happened between in several different instances. So maybe a whole school doing something, just a classroom doing something, two teachers collaborating to create something that went out. So we will look at some specific vignettes and examples. But for right now, I just kind of want to think about disrupting our mind a little bit on what we think of as a partnership and what we view as community. So community to me is not one person doing all the inviting and the dispensing of information. You may not agree with that, and that's okay. So please push back at any time as well. What questions or comments might you have about this idea of community? How many of you have been a part of design thinking or human-centered design? No one? Just me? Okay, this will be interesting. So this is this type of work it's in the business world, but it's moving into education, and it's really interesting. And so if you've heard of WMCAT, it's West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology. They have focused a lot of their work on this. And so it's a way to make a product or something even better, thinking about the person it is designed for. And it's a series of steps that you go through to create something. So I thought it might be interesting for us to try design thinking to create something for a mathematical community and see what happens. And so the idea behind it is you kind of iterate on that idea. You create it, you try it out, you get feedback, you tweak some things, throw it out there again, get feedback, tweak some things, throw it out there again. So that's what I hope our 5 sessions will entail, like us trying things in the interim and bringing them back, thinking about what we can do differently. And since all of your school communities are different, we're going to try to tailor it for your specific classroom or your specific school. So if you are here with people from your district, that's great. If you are the only person from your district, that's great too. This is for your classroom. So what we're going to start with, so this is kind of the steps of design thinking, and today we're really just getting into empathy. We're going to learn how to empathize and define something. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to be in a partnership today of someone who is a parent of a school-aged child and someone who is not a parent of a school-aged child. What I want you to do is kind of take your teacher hats off right now. So take those off, throw them down, and I want you to either imagine yourself as a parent of a school-aged child right now. So you're not teacher parent, you're just parent. And then if you do not have school-aged children, I want you to think of yourself. See if you can remember back when you were in school. I want you to be student now. So it could be college, or might be most helpful though if you can think of your elementary, high school experience. I'm going to have you reach back. And here's what I want you to think about. What was your last experience with mathematics at home, not as a teacher, either from the point of view of a parent or a student? Now, when I say experience, this is very, very broad. So it should have like some of your feelings and emotions and maybe whatever the activity was and what other people were doing. I want you to try to think about that. What was your last experience? So some of you, it might have been helping someone with homework last night. It's a little bit easier to access that memory than way back. But take a moment to kind of jot some things down, just on your own. You can jot down a couple notes. If it's all in your mind, you don't have to do that either. Just if you need something for reference. All right, and if you can pause, don't share anything yet. Just keep it quiet and silent on your own. Don't share anything yet. We'll give one more minute of think time. You can also draw an image or something if you think that will spark something. If you are a parent of a school-aged child, could you stand up? All right, I think this will work out, but if everyone will just look up here for our direction once we get moving. You're going to partner with someone who is sitting down, but before you do that, I would like, so what we're going to exercise is figuring out what's going on for somebody else. How do we build empathy? So we're going to have the person sitting. So the one who is thinking of a student experience, you're going to interview the parent first. So what that means is you're just going to ask that question. What was your last experience with math at home? Tell me about that. And let that, ask some more probing questions. I want you to take notes. What are they saying? What happened? If something's curious, like, you can hear an emotion in somebody's voice. So like a little brother came over and like, oh, well, what happened with that? And why is that an interesting dynamic? And tell me more. You want to kind of get the idea of the whole experience. And then once you're done with that interview, I'm going to give you 4 minutes. So 4 minutes for the student, the person thinking of student experience, to interview a parent. And then after that 4 minutes is up, then the parent of a school-age child is going to interview the person thinking of a student experience and do the same thing. What was that like for you? What happened? Do you remember anything that was helpful? You know, just different questions that you might ask to kind of just gain an idea of what was that experience like. And then we're going to go from there. What questions do you have? Okay, I will put a little timer up here just to help us. I'm the worst at time, so it's always helpful for me to have a timer on. So if you are standing, I want you to find someone who is seated and be their partner. So basically what that'll look like is go and sit next to someone, and then anyone left standing, we may just partner you together. I changed your conversation. I promise you're going to get more time to talk to each other. But we're going to pause you, and you can stay where you are right now because you're going to stay with that partner and you're going to carry the conversation a little bit deeper. So that first step, let's turn this thing off. Sorry about that. Is to start to hear someone's story. So that's part of the building of empathy. So we got to hear from a parent's perspective and also from a student's perspective. Our overall goal is through these interviews. So each of you must think of yourself as a designer, and the person you're interviewing is the user of whatever that design is going to be. So you're trying to think about, okay, I'm hearing about your last home math experience. What can I create that's going to make that better? The lens we want to use, though, is what can we design that's going to help build math community? So that's not just that isolated, like if it was a worksheet that caused a lot of tears, we're not trying to design a better worksheet. But we might be thinking about the overall experience as a whole. What can we do differently so that what's really causing those tears? What's behind the tears? And so what you're going to do with your interviewee, your user, this time is try to dig even a little deeper to think about how am I going to design something for you that's going to build math community. I need to know some more information. So I don't know if you dove into maybe least favorite part, favorite part. What was it about that favorite part that made that wonderful for you? How can I iterate that experience or capitalize on that? So you're going to have this is a little confusing, a little bit weird kind of work. But I hope you got some good information. It sounded like everybody had a lot to say. I don't know if you're talking about this thing in particular or you got in some other conversations, which is possible, and that's fine. But now we want to go back, and the person who started interviewing, you're going to start interviewing again. You're just going to get 2 more minutes to try and gain some more insight. So is there some history behind whatever is going on here? Or, were there other experiences that were better than this one? Or were there ones that were worse than this one? Just different things to try to get a better picture of what it is that's really important to that person. What's going to give them a positive math community? What's going to get them this idea that, like, I'm connected to school and math. Like, this is making sense. It's okay. Now, I know we're just talking about an isolated incident in a home. That's not the overall big picture, but we have to start somewhere. What questions do you have about this? It is a little bit weird to dive into things like this, so I understand if it feels uncomfortable. You're like, I don't really know what you're talking about. What questions do you have, or do you feel like you can dive deeper into those interviews? We'll try it. Like I said, this is work in progress. Right, so we'll have 2 minutes for each of you to interview again. So this time we're trying to dig even deeper, maybe go beyond the one experience that you're talking about and think about other ones that may have affected that or maybe different that they want to have happen again. So try to dig a little bit deeper this time and find out what's important. What does this person value about a mathematical experience? Okay, 2 minutes each. Is there anyone willing to share a little bit from their interview? Let's make this your own, or I don't know. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus if their interview, they didn't want their personal story shared, but maybe if there's a partnership who's willing to talk about one of the interviews, about an experience.
I'd be happy to share.
Thank you.
I have 2 school-age children, 1 preschooler and 1 that's not. I have total of 4, so 2 of them are school-age. One of them, homework is not a problem. The younger one can be a problem. I was sharing a frustrating time with homework was Sylvia went to dance right after school, and then right after that to soccer. And then she had to gobble down dinner, and then she had homework. And she had 40 minutes before homework before school. So she was not receptive to any kind of coaching or teaching from her father, and her father was frustrated too. And then we finally got it done, and then I reflected on it. She was not in an emotional state to do work. She was not in a physical state to do work, and she was nowhere near a mental state to do that kind of work, and neither was her father. So it was a frustrating time. It was not fun.
And if I were interviewing you, I might probe a little bit more. Is that the experience that happens a lot, like a busy schedule, and so when you get to that point of the day when you can sit down and work on that, everyone's already exhausted.
Everybody's toast, yeah.
Everybody's toast. And so thank you for sharing that, Jason. I don't think that you are alone in that situation at all. And this next part, thinking about his interview, start thinking about what are the needs that started to pop out and what he is saying. And you were very great in mentioning them yourself. I mean, you talked about mental state, emotional state, even physical state. What are those needs? Like, what were we trying to accomplish? You wanted that to be like a positive math experience, but something was disconnected there, and you had frustration and needed more time, but even some more just unstructured time before. It's just thinking about what are some needs that came out in what he was saying. What are some things that you heard? So what I'll challenge you to do is look through the kind of notes or things that you took from your interview and think about what were the needs and different things that started to pop up. What was trying to be accomplished? What did that experience do for both the student and the parent? What did they value that didn't happen? Or, there's different questions there. Start thinking about what were the needs. And now that I know about those needs, what are some insights? And I know this is a little bit weird to think about everything this way, but this does just help us to empathize and think about, well, what is it? It wasn't that Jason couldn't help his daughter with it. It wasn't that she was incapable of doing whatever it was. There were other things that were happening at that time that didn't make that experience as awesome as it could have been. What might some alternative experiences be that could happen at a different time of the day or in a different way, or that might make that a little bit better when they're doing math together at home? What could it look like differently? What are some insights? Well, we know at the very end of the day, once all is said and done, when everyone's toast, that's a really hard time to go through some of that. When it's your only time, that's what you've got, and you've got to deal with it. But is there something else that could happen? And so what you're going to do for the next 3 minutes And none of this needs to be like beautiful and perfect and a wonderful thing. That's what's awesome about this design thinking is it's quick and it's messy, but it gets us to some new ideas and start to think outside of what we always do. Break us out of our patterns. So here are the two things that I want you to think about, and you don't have to talk to your partner about this one. You're just sitting there yourself thinking about it. What are the needs that were popping up from what you heard? And so to help you with that, those should be verbs, or they don't have to be, but that can be helpful. Think about some of those questions. And then what are some insights, new learning about your partner and their world that can help you with your design? So my new learning about Jason is they've got a lot going on. And there's a lot, maybe we can capitalize on what's happening there in a different way. We don't want math to always be associated with the last thing of the day that you have to fight through. And so what I know about his world and his daughter's world is that there's just a lot going on there, and that time is a barrier. And so that's just an insight for me. Oh, I can use that to help think about, well, what's a different experience? So it doesn't have to be like Socrates or anything like that. You're just kind of like, oh, this is an issue, or this exists in their world, or this is something that's going to help me think about how to make an experience better. What questions do you have about that? So those are your two jobs. Think about those two things for the next 3 minutes. And it will help if you write these down, so we just kind of have needs and then insights. If anyone needs paper, I've got some paper up here too. We're learning through this. The next step in this design process is to take these needs and insights and put them in it's called a point of view statement. So the point of view statement would be, well, blank, someone put their name in there, needs a way to blank, unexpectedly in his or her world is da-da-da-da-da-da. So kind of the name needs a way to whatever that need was, unexpectedly in their world. And so that insight is that thing that you can leverage in what you're designing. So and there's no wrong answer here. We do want to try to stay out of the judgment zone. So take a moment and try to fill in that sentence stem for your partner, your user.
The last portion
yeah. So, like an insight might be, like I learned that just time is the barrier for you. So it's just something that's like, okay, that's something I have to consider if I'm going to create something for you. I know that time's of the essence. So. How old is that daughter?
She's in 4th grade.
4th grade.
That was her 3rd grade year.
Aw, sweet pea.
Yeah.
I imagine I'll be in the same boat. My oldest, she's in 1st grade, loves all homework, so would do it for fun over the summer. I'm gonna make my own sheets, Mom.
Yeah.
My son is totally a different way. So it's interesting to take into consideration that kids in the same home react differently to different things. So that's actually an insight about you too. Okay, we're going to pause right there again. So if you can take your conversation and end that last sentence. Is there anyone who's willing to share their point of view statement? Again, there's no one right answer here. There's a lot of different things. And this is just to help us think about how can we design an experience that's different for somebody. So if you don't mind, can I say one about your situation? All right, so if I was going to say one for Jason, Jason needs a way to minimize frustration during, I don't know what you would call it, homework time or whatever, to minimize frustration for homework time. Unexpectedly in his world, his children approach it differently. And they, like he was talking about his oldest daughter, really enjoys homework. That's not an issue for her at all. The other one, it is different. So in his own family, there's different things happening that cause some of the frustration and disruption. That's something, if I'm going to think about an experience I'm going to send home, now I've got to think about their siblings. What could I do differently that might involve the whole family and keep frustration at a minimum? I have some ideas. I'm not going to say them right now. But, now I'm going to be thinking about his whole family, not just his daughter. That's what changed my perspective right here. You don't have to share it if you don't want to right now. But I hope you can see how this starts to get us thinking about what's going to be better for that family and the community and me as a teacher as well. So what your job between now and then when we meet again in October, you're going to listen to parents as best as you can. Some of you get to see them at pickup and drop off and different things. So I know that some of your parent interaction is a lot for some of you teachers and not very much for others, depending on where you are. I have been asking a lot of parents some questions about math and math at home, math at school, and I've gained a lot of insight. And one thing they told me was please don't have everybody send home a survey about what parents want at home. I said, okay, I will try to think of something different. And that's what brought me to this design thinking idea. Starting to pay attention to parents over the next few weeks in a formal or informal capacity. So we're going to think of parents as our users in design thinking. You can choose just one parent to really focus on. That's okay. Or you can try to think about more than one parent in your classroom. But in design thinking, they say it is helpful to think of one person as your user. Because once you start thinking about a broader, more general group, the product becomes less useful. And so if you start to design it for one parent in your room, so think about a parent that you really do want to connect with for whatever reason that might be. Maybe you'll have a chance to talk to them for 5 minutes. I don't know. I hope so. But what do they value in a homeschool connection? And maybe even more specifically with math. When have they felt part of the community of the school? And if it's not math, find out what it was. And let's capitalize on that. What was it that made you feel part of a community with the school? What do they wish for if they've never had that feeling? What might they worry about? So maybe just want a little informal interview, and you can tell them, we're trying to create something that's going to make a math community, a true math community between parents and the school. And what I have for you in the Google Classroom folder, which we're going to go into in just one moment, I'm just going to show you what this looks like. Oh, some of you are already in there. Awesome. I posted this, but now it's not showing up. Shoot. Hold on. I will put it back in there again. But now I don't know if you'll be able to see it. No. All right, I'm going to have to upload this again. What it is just different ways to interview somebody. So you could take a photograph. It's just from design thinking, so it's just a set of different ways to do an empathy interview. So I will get that posted back in there. I'm sorry, I thought it was there. If you have not gotten into this already, you need to go to classroom.google.com. You're going to join our class. Our breakout session code is odd KH3. I don't know why they gave me the odd one. Yell at Rusty. Does anyone need this slide up here still? Can you put that back so I can write the session down? Yeah. Whoops, wrong way.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got it. It's on the bottom of the other sheet.
Oh, okay. Hey, if you are able to get in right now, I hope that you are. It works on your iPhone, computer. In your implementation guide, you're going to begin to capture your thoughts around the first section and a commitment. So kind of your commitment for the next time is to listen to parents. It's basically what you're saying you'll do. And I hope you will bring some of that insight back in with you. I'm going to share what I heard from parents. What questions do you have about the implementation guide? This is something we're going to be using to collect our evidence over the whole 5 sessions. This first one's pretty easy today because your job is just to kind of put what you're committed to. Oh, I know, it is hard to look at the whole thing on your phone. Next time when we come, we'll share what we learned from our users, our parents, to just kind of gain insight. What is it that they're going to want and need, and what can we think about to design something for them? But I'm also going to share with you what the Counting Collections and Choral Counting book did with families, just to give you guys some different ideas. Okay, I promised Rusty you would all do this before you leave the room. And I know there's 2 minutes left. Think about what you're going to communicate back to your team, but most importantly, go here to fill out this survey. When you are done with this survey, you are free to go. I do thank you for coming today and joining on this journey with me.